Off-roaders are part of our lives, even though most owners never take them near mud. But these are some four-wheel drives you can get dirty. And here's one you can't mess with in the mud, but which none of the others can mess with on the road: BMW's definitive X5. Up in the mountains of Austria, quite close to the place Mercedes actually builds the M-Class and G-Wagen, our celebrity road tester prepares to test the off-roaders in a new environment: off-road. Back home in Monaco, Mika Häkkinen drives an M-Class, but it's all town work on tarmac, so not only was the road surface new for him, but the vehicle as well, since he chose to drive the more expensive and tougher G-Wagen. And incredibly, for a double world champion, under instruction as well, as he learned a different kind of traction control. Test driver Erwin Vorish took Mika around the course, and afterwards the Finn said that he'd been explaining how the diffs and suspension work in the mud and how to minimise wheel spin. But this is Häkkinen's normal driving environment. But the F1 car comes with full traction control software in place, and while the G-Wagen and the ML do have a form of traction control as well, this is a hands-on experience of a different kind.
Looking forward to try some Mercedes today, four-wheel drive, M-Class, and I'm looking forward to see how it goes off-road and on to tarmac.
Mitsubishi's record on Paris-Dakar is one of almost uninterrupted success, and the Paris-Dakar Pajero comes to you with the single most impressive pedigree in the world of off-road driving. Of course, it's a highly specialised vehicle. The Pajero was driven to victory by Jutta Kleinschmidt to make motorsport history as the first female winner of this most gruelling of rallies in January last year. But the road-going version, not the Wild Evo model we looked at last year, but the regular showroom product, comes with all that experience and history attached, and definitely does deliver the goods. This is the bottom line after all, because the Pajero is one of the genuine off-road breeds, and the target market for volume sales will be places like Australia and Asia, where it will have to deal with some fairly challenging terrain and conditions on a regular basis. Recent redesign and improvement has given the Pajero long travel suspension and a near 45-degree approach angle, so it's a serious piece of off-road kit as you'd expect, not just a tough-looking MPV like the ML or the X5. But don't be put off by any of that, it works, but it's not workmanlike, with wood grain and leather trim available, along with electrically adjustable seats, huge aircon system and a 6-stack CD changer to help while away the miles. There's plenty of room and comfort in the passenger compartment too, and in the big versions you can add a third row of seats for the school run or your crew. Engine choice is headed up by the big V6, and if you're serious about off-road, then that's the obvious choice, although the diesel is a fair piece of work too and still pulls hard from low down. Despite the seriousness of its off-road capability, the Pajero has none of the big ladder frames that characterise and please the US market so much. There's a monocoque chassis with the running gear carried on subframes, and there's all-independent double wishbone suspension all round. Wheel travel is always an issue with independent suspension, but on Pajero the rear wishbones especially are good and long, giving plenty of movement in the rough. There's a limited slip differential, standard on all models. It's not worldwide available though, and even where it's not a grey import, the spec will vary. But if you want to go places as opposed to just looking as if you might, then outside of Land Rovers, Jeeps and Hummers, there aren't too many genuine off-roaders with this kind of pedigree and this kind of ability. And here's something that's been based on the most basic of criteria for almost 20 years and has been a raging success as a result. Or perhaps because it's been a raging sales success, Jeep's various owners have shied away from making any radical changes on the don't mess with a winning formula principle, or more likely in American, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the trouble with the Cherokee was that although it wasn't broke, in fact it's a very hard thing to break, and if you don't believe me, just try it someday. Although it wasn't broke as such, it did need fixing. Its 20-year-old design had been groundbreaking in its day, but its effective mud-plugging capabilities were matched with a chassis and road manners which were similarly mud-plugging. Overwhelmed by a surge of imports from Japan and then more recently Europe as well, Jeep became aware that the worldwide market was less interested in negotiating the Rubicon Trail than it was in negotiating a 5% discount from Prada or some such. Boulevard cruising was the name of the game, and that was a real headache for the boys at Jeep because Americans weren't interested in taking a four-wheel drive to Rodeo Drive. They wanted to go into the woods, climb hills and ford streams, big ones. With a familiar but outstandingly effective part-time four-wheel drive system that has the option of 2, 4 or low ratio settings, the Cherokee remains a formidable off-roader. The Quadra drive system also offers the ability to transfer all the engine torque to any one wheel, which it does automatically, and there is plenty there for it to transfer. There's a new high-output version of the big block V8 that produces a very measurable increase in all the important numbers and makes this an outstandingly capable off-roader with the sheer low-down grunt to tackle almost anything you're brave enough to tackle yourself. Of course, there's massive ground clearance, huge suspension travel, big coil springs at each corner carrying its 2 live axles, which Jeep believes, quite correctly, to be far more effective in the rough than all independent designs. They also say that the progressively locking mechanical diffs in the centre of each axle respond faster and more smoothly than the viscous couplings which some other makers favour in their off-road offerings. And it's tougher too. It's a Jeep, after all. Never underestimate the power of intimidation, said the Hummer advertising for the original military off-roader, which we all wanted for the urban jungle, and everyone who could afford it was queuing up to buy. Perceiving a gap in the market ideally suited to a company armed with a flawless pedigree for scary big off-road competence, Hummer present the H2, a vehicle built to an enviable design brief that few of us are brave enough to argue with. H2, we are told, is a full-size SUV with unprecedented versatility. It has immediate brand recognition as a Hummer, which was one of its mandates from the start. It's a Hummer through and through, particularly in terms of its capabilities on rough terrain, but with an air of civility and refinement previously unheard of in a vehicle with such capabilities. Take that, with its 10-foot wheelbase and almost 16 feet of overall length, plus the 6-litre V8, 9 inches of ground clearance and ladder frame chassis strong enough to go to war in. Take all that to the sissies in marketing with their not too big, not too small, and see how they react. Even though it's not quite so brutal in appearance as its big brother, H2 is everything you want your SUV to be and then some. Even Hummer says its design is daring and attention-getting, and that its look and feel convey the sense of power, authority and complete control that buyers seek.
The Hummer H1 has really great value points in certain areas. and has challenges in others. This is a vehicle that's a little bit narrower, so your trail riding capabilities are going to be a little bit better because it's a little easier to maneuver around on the trail off-road. Obviously, that's going to benefit you on the road as well. But it's not a wimp. It's a Hummer. It's a massive vehicle.
The original Hummer continues as the icon of rugged off-roading, an extremely powerful brand, say Hummer, that connects to consumers on a decidedly emotional level. We know exactly what they mean. Hummer advertising claims there's nothing like it, and who's going to argue when Hummer describes its own customers as fiercely loyal? But they should know. What's worrying the rest of us is not how loyal, but how fierce. And should we stop calling H2 the baby Hummer now, like the newspapers do? More off-roaders next as we come right up to date with the latest Range Rover and BMW's excellent X5. Not so much off-road as off the shoulder. While the X5 is more of a fashion accessory than an off-road essential, a Range Rover is the go-anywhere package, from the King's Road to Pilgrim's Way. The idea of an upmarket version of the Land Rover was first suggested in 1952, and the Road Rover raised its head again 4 years later. The idea resurfaced a third and final time in 1966, and this time it went the distance, and quite some distance it was too. Early on, the decision was taken to make this version of the Road Rover completely separate to the Land Rover, as perception of this area of the marketplace was already changing. Jeep had raised its sights and its standards with the Wagoneer, and in the Range Rover we could see the very first beginnings of the off-road market segment, which grew so rapidly in the 20 years since the first Range Rover in 1970. Now there's a new Range Rover, and we do mean new. Though there were different series of the original, this is a new car. Range Rover not revised, but reinvented. As the company changed hands and moved on to its eventual new home under the Ford banner, no less than £1 billion has been spent on developing a car which costs as much as an S-Class and rides like one as well, but without sacrificing the astounding off-road capability of its predecessor. That at least was the objective, and scoffers might think the project doomed from the outset on hearing that Rover has scrapped the steel ladder chassis and beam axle, so long considered the only means of giving a vehicle the strength and articulation necessary to deal with serious off-road terrain. In their place comes a new and strong body shell supporting McPherson's struts at the front and a double wishbone independent rear suspension. Part of the huge financial investment included a £60 million stamping plant with the largest press of its kind in Europe, bashing out almost 60,000 panels a week under its 8,000-tonne onslaught. The new body factory, £80 million, uses more than 100 robots to produce 10 new bodies every hour, 10 of what the company believes are the largest unitary bodies in the motoring world. So large that extra space was needed in the new paint shop built to accommodate Freelander a few years ago. £15 million more. Inside, it's big. New interior features are matched by new interior dimensions, and though the Range Rover has all the toys, it also has a neat and uncluttered dash. Very nice, thank you. Plus, a lot of electronics and comfort fitments from the BMW X5, which is, you might expect, a rival for the cash of potential buyers. But where BMW moved the goalposts and went for ride comfort on the road over and above any kind of off-road capability, Range Rover is meant to provide X5 comfort and Range Rover off-roading. All those who cringed at the words unitary and independent rear suspension may now eat your hearts out, because the Range Rover has increased suspension travel over the previous model and, thanks to electronics, behaves almost as if it still has a beam axle anyway. Sensors, which can tell if it's on tarmac or gravel, either allow the rear wheels to act independently for an executive ride on metalled roads, or they ensure that the lifting of one wheel reacts downwards on the other side, making it behave as if it had a beam axle in the rough. The result is that it does indeed appear to have all the cross-country capability that made the previous version a byword, and that, despite a considerable increase in size, especially in width. In fact, almost everyone who has driven it has emerged with a host of praise, and not just for its sheer capability, which is hugely impressive and much aided by the electronic suspension, short overhangs at either end, and astonishing ground clearance. But on top of that comes a degree of control that's almost breathtaking. The Range Rover attacks terrain in a way that Hummer would be proud of, and dominates it in a way Hummer owners are bound to admire. This is off-roading at the very highest level, and behaviour like this begins to justify the equally aggressive pricing. But where the new Range Rover is less impressive is, obviously, on the highway, and the reason it is less impressive is not that it fails or has weaknesses, but simply because it sets out to achieve the apparently impossible and only almost succeeds. Part of the problem is caused by the things that make it so pleasurable to drive. High behind the wheel, with the kind of panoramic view normally only enjoyed by truck drivers, you feel comfortable inside. But then you notice the width and find that anything less than a motorway is a narrow road you have to think about quite carefully. And as soon as you start to go quickly, it's clear that centre of gravity and all-up weight are acting in harmony against the road holding. It rides like an S-Class up to a point, but after that point you are going to need a lot of road to calm things down. But it's still S-Class money, and it's your choice. This is S-Class money as well, especially when it comes bare of any extras, and like most BMWs, it needs them, of course. But the X5 is selling faster than the boys in Munich can roll them off the lines, proving that BMW was bang on with its market research when deciding whether and how to join the off-road MPV people carrier is it a Jeep market. In the end, BMW designated the X5 as a sports activity vehicle. Everyone else, they say, makes sports utility vehicles. And their choice was made on the basis that 90% of SUVs never see anything more challenging than a roadside grass verge, even in supposedly redneck America. This is what most owners all over the world use their off-roaders for. Smoothing around the back roads, on the school run, the shopping run, occasionally a long weekend by the sea. But off-roading? Never. So BMW looked at this growing segment of the market, asking what was really wanted, and then at what was on offer, and finding that the two were slightly at odds. Thus, the decision to make the X5 into a big, tall 5 Series estate, which could, if required, take a little bit of rough with a lot of smooth. So it has the look of the other suburbanites, high up with big clearance and massive wheels, but it doesn't feel anything like them. In the rough, X5 can't emulate the efficiency of Range Rover or Hummer, nor match the ruthless off-road ability of the G-Wagon or even the very effective Pajero. Instead, it's packed with 5 Series engineering and technology, with the aim of producing a degree of road-going poise and ability which none of the rest can match. The success of this must be judged on 2 criteria. If the marketing decision was the right one, then X5 would sell very well. If the engineering execution of that decision lived up to the mission statement, then X5 would be selling faster than ice cream in the Sahara. In the light of earlier remarks about its runaway sales success, you know that BMW were bang on in the marketing appraisal, and we can tell you they were even better in the engineering department. X5 drives like a dream. So now, step forward all those who swore they would never own a 4-wheel drive shopping centre poser, because this is it. While the X5 performance is astonishing, its road behaviour is breathtaking. It's not like cornering on rails. The front pushes wide first and the back just gradually joins in if your entry speed was high enough. But it corners absolutely flat with no body roll worth talking about. That's an astonishing achievement for a car that's about the same size as a 5 Series estate, only a foot taller and weighs half as much again, 600 kilos more. And it puts the awesome achievement of its chassis engineers into some kind of perspective. But let's add another dimension to that, because the car to which we are continually comparing X5 is universally acknowledged as being the benchmark for executive saloon ride, handling and refinement. But no wonder. OK, you do have to climb up a bit to get inside, and you are looking down on the world once you're in. But you sit well, low down behind the dashboard, and in front of you, it's all BMW, with that clinically perfect dash crammed with electronic everything, including a Steptronic automatic that learns your driving style and adapts itself to suit. Electric seats have a memory button that restores your preferred position. You know the rest, I'm sure. Elsewhere, there's a typically thorough approach to the necessities, including all the usual fold-flat seating to make it a proper load carrier, with a strong lower section to the tailgate, plus an extending load floor that makes life even easier. When it launched in the autumn of 2000, the X5 had a choice of 2 spec levels based on either the large 4.5 litre petrol engine with a 3 litre straight 6 in petrol and diesel, also available for around £10,000 less. Quite a big saving, especially when you look at the way the diesel unit makes the big, heavy piece of kit this is jump around. But with the big 32-valve V-engine limited to 128 miles an hour in regular trim and 143 on 19-inch wheels, the X5 accelerates to 100 kilometres an hour almost as quickly as a 5 Series saloon, and that really is racing car performance. And all of that holds through to the driving experience as well. Existing owners will be mildly surprised at how closely the X5 resembles their own car on the road, but it will amaze owners of other four-wheel drives.